All right. You want to hear me okay? Good. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. So on behalf of the UNM Alumni Association and the Lobo Living Room Committee, welcome to tonight's program, Lobo Living Room, State-of-the-Art Research from Albuquerque to Africa. I'm Erica Cruz-Munoz, your chair of Lobo Living Room. I've been on the board now for a couple of years. I'm a 2010 communication and journalism graduate. And is this breaking up? Do I need to hold it? No, okay, I can hear it. So I'm a 2010 UNM graduate, and I've been in Albuquerque for a long time, and I'm proud to be on the alumni board and a part of this committee. So it's great to welcome everyone tonight. Thanks for joining us in the lovely PAÍS auditorium in this fabulous building, which we're going to learn a little bit more about tonight, and also get to wander around a little bit and take a look. But first, I want to talk about Lobo Living Room and what it is. So we are actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. So Lobo Living Room was created in 2012 to shine a spotlight on outstanding UNM programs, faculty, alumni, and community members. Our presentations highlight alumni, faculty, and community members in their area of expertise. Continuing to engage alumni, students, faculty, staff, and the community. This is kind of weird. Before we begin tonight's presentation, I'm going to give away a few prizes, but I'm going to make you wait for a second because I want to talk a little bit more about Lobo Living Room. So since I said that we started in 2012, this is our 10-year anniversary, and we are so excited that it's been going on this long. So I just wanted to share that throughout the years, we've done so many programs. We started out, the very first one was a backstage tour at Pope Joy in 2012. It was backstage. They got to visit the Lion King set and look at all the stuff with Lion King when it was here. And that was one of them. I wish I would have been there, but I was not. I know that's actually on our list, is to do a Lobo Living Room at Pope Joy with whatever's coming next. We spent an evening on Mars. We went to the Santa Fe Opera. We learned the science of beer. There were tastings, by the way. We celebrated 90 years of UNM Press, and we've done many, many more since then. So just a little flavor of what we've done and what's to come. So hopefully we'll continue to do all these great programs. So let's get going with our raffle. Amy, will you help me? All right, we're going to give away two. Make sure I didn't drop any. All right, we have 574926. I love the size. All right. So you are going to win. We're calling it a spatula. It is a spatula that has the logo emblem on it, so you can flip your burgers in style. And it has a bottle opener on the other end, so you can also open your beer in style. Congratulations. Where am I taking it? I can only have so far. Sorry. All right, we're gonna have one more try. Awesome. This ticket is 575003. So you are winning a UNM cooler bag, thermal lined. Turn it back. Gonna keep your beverages in style. All right, so as you all saw, Amy Miller is running back there giving out gifts, but I want to introduce her for tonight. She is our president of the UNM Alumni Board. We're very fortunate to have her. She is also the president of AMM Consulting, and with more than 20 years of experience in the business and nonprofit world, Amy provides her expertise to organizations on strategic planning and project management, stakeholder engagement, and government relations. She also does communications and issue management, outreach strategies, and trainings. This is why she's such a great president of our board. So Amy previously served as the External Affairs Director for the Nature Conservancy of New Mexico chapter and was a PNM for the 14 years prior. She's participated in many leadership development programs and held leadership positions throughout New Mexico. She is of course an alumni and has graduate and undergraduate degrees from the university and is a graduate of many leadership development programs, including Leadership New Mexico and Leadership Albuquerque. And as mentioned, she currently serves as the president of our UNM Alumni Association. Let's welcome Amy. Pull it down. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for joining us in this incredible facility tonight. This last summer, the UNM Alumni Board of Directors came over here before a board meeting and toured a few of the labs, got to talk to professors, got to talk to students, and I was just blown away about the kind of work that's being done in this building, and that UNM has such a world-class facility. It's something we should all be proud of. That's one of my goals this year. Is we often in New Mexico focus on what's wrong, but there are so many good things and so many right things going on in this campus. And tonight you're going to hear about some of those great things and share this with the community. We tell you a little bit about what you're going to hear tonight and who you will hear from. Launched in 2019 in the state-of-the-art Physics and Astronomy Interdisciplinary Science Building, and everyone on campus calls it PAÍS. That's just become what it's called. The Interdisciplinary Science Cooperative is dedicated to bringing people across disciplines together in the spirit of producing stronger research outcomes that positively impact our world. Join us this evening for an evening with Jillian Rutherford, a second-year PhD student who is working collaboratively with the Comparative Human and Primate Physiology Center and the Center for Advancement of Spatial Informatics Research and Education at the co-op to advance our understanding of human evolution. Through a truly revolutionary approach, Jillian is using GIS systems, I should say Geographic Information Systems, to track chimpanzees in Africa from right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You'll learn how our students and faculty are benefiting from this new disciplinary program. You'll find out how Jillian is increasing our understanding of these incredible animals, and you'll get a chance to tour this new state-of-the-art facility after we're done listening to her presentation. A little bit about Jillian. She's a second-year PhD student at University of New Mexico, whose research focus lies at the intersection of chimpanzee movement ecology and geospatial big data. Her research uses GIS tools to study a long-term data set of GPS points collected from the Kanawara chimpanzee community in KIBALE National Park, Uganda, in association with the KIBALE Chimpanzee Project. She has two broad aims of her work. The first is to answer questions about how chimpanzees relate to their spatial environment. And secondly, it's to contribute to the production of geographically sound ranging research products that will ultimately inform effective conservation management decisions that support the continued survival of this endangered species. Really looking forward to this presentation, and I will turn it over to Jillian.
Let's do a little switcheroo. Is that a good sound level? Can you all hear me?
All right, real quick before we get started with Jillian, we're going to have a quick introduction of the facility by Associate Dean Lippitt and Professor Jeffrey Rapp. Oh,
I can break out my professor voice. Can you guys hear me? Well, I was about to say that's the best remarks I've ever given. So welcome to PAÍS, those of you that have not been here before. This building was conceived and built and opened right before the pandemic. So December of 2019 is when this building opened. And it's a building designed for collaboration. So as we tour later and you see the building, you'll notice that every piece of the building is a place where you can sit down and start working out ideas. There's whiteboards tucked away, there's soft seating tucked away. All the glass in the building is writable. You'll notice as we tour around that students take advantage of that. It does erase, thankfully. And so tough time to open a building built for collaboration and then send everyone home. Despite that, the co-op has really just been an engine for bringing people together even during the pandemic. So we had in spring of 2020, peak pandemic, everyone's at home. We had our first team research symposium, brought together 200 researchers from around the country, mostly here at UNM and in New Mexico, to start learning how to do team research better. And it turns out it's not an entirely natural process. There are ways to do it well and ways to not do it well. That event has continued, and now we've all come back into the building, and we're starting to see the benefits of building a place like this. In addition to having world-class facilities, which we'll show you for labs, it is also a really innovative building nationwide in terms of bringing people together by coincidence, right? A lot of the best ideas happen over the Friday coffee hour in the lobby, over sitting down with a peer and running over to a faculty office and saying, hey, we're thinking about this thing, and then working it out, right? It's not always planned. It's most of the time serendipitous, and that's what we're trying to foment in this building, is bringing a bunch of bright people together into the same space and asking them to run with it. And so I'm actually going to be Jeff Rack today too. Jeff is home homesick with the rest of his family. Like many of ours are probably at home sick at the moment. It feels like everybody is. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in the future. So thanks to a donor, we started something called the Co-op Collaboration Series. We've already had speakers from around the country, from very prestigious universities, and of course our own Vice President for Research, who came and are talking about best practices for building teams and working together. And so we're trying to bring that to our campus because we believe it's the future of research and the future of problem solving, period. So this spring, we will be building on the Co-op Collaboration Series to offer new fellowships for students just like Jillian to be able to go between labs and do short stints between the different centers in the building. We'll show you those in a little bit. We also have a interdisciplinary fellowship here called the Water Fellowship that was funded by another donor that funds undergraduate students from any discipline around campus to come together and work on building games. I know that sounds funny, but building games so that people can understand how the Rio Grande water system and trade-offs work within that system. And it's online if you want to go check it out, actually. So we're going to continue to build programs like this. And you're about to hear from Jillian, who was actually, I'm very proud to say, my master's student a few years ago now. We were just talking about how one of my children is a very different size from when we started, and is now pursuing a PhD in an adjacent lab. I run the Aspire facility, which we'll see briefly today, in the chimp lab. Same topic, very different sets of expertise applied to the problem, and it's right down the hall. And so I'm very, very happy to have Jillian here to talk to you about her work today, because I think it's an excellent example of the type of things that we want to see a lot more of on this campus, and the types of things that this building is designed to allow. So I'll leave it to Jillian. Welcome. The Zoom issue.
First and share that.
Yeah. Thank you.
She said go to slideshow.
Yeah. Yes.
Make it the Zoom.
And then. You know how many PhD scientists it takes to solve an IT problem?
Is there a child in the house?
Takes one MBA. Yeah, perfect.
Put that over there. Show that.
Oh, beautiful.
This is why he gets paid the big bucks.
Phenomenal.
Yep.
Right, thank you so much.
Test your clicker. Make sure.
All right,
Yeah.
we are a go. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. It is an honor to be able to speak with you this evening at this event hosted by you. Oh. Would be an honor if you could hear me. Okay. How about now?
Nope.
Oh.
No.
Gracious. How about now? How about now? My name is Jillian Rutherford, and I am a second-year PhD student here at UNM. And over the last 5 years, I have had the opportunity to pursue research at the intersection of two very different disciplines, and in particular, two cutting-edge research groups that are both housed right here in this building. This evening, I would like to share with you how I arrived at this unique place within academia, what my interdisciplinary research looks like, and how the facilities and opportunities offered by the Interdisciplinary Science Co-op is supporting my work. So I didn't start out with the intention of pursuing an academic career in interdisciplinary sciences. I actually started as a zookeeper in Canada, caring for everything from crocodiles to turkey vultures to herds of elk. And I'd always wanted to be a giraffe keeper, but over time I found myself developing this unexpectedly intense interest in primates. This is Nyani. She is a Hamadryas baboon who I credit nearly single-handedly with shifting my focus to primates. And we had this really special connection with one another. Here she is in the bottom picture, grooming me through the bars of her enclosure. And it was around this time that the bars and the enclosures started to become an ethical problem for me. So the next logical step in my journey was to pursue something with wild primates instead. And because my interests weren't just about spending time with primates, but about more driven by curiosity for why they do what they do, I began looking into research groups that studied primates in a wild setting. Lo and behold, here at UNM, there happens to be a renowned group with ties back to Jane Goodall and an impressive research program. So I packed up my bags and moved to Albuquerque and started as an undergrad in the anthropology department with the goal of someday getting to participate in the work that the KIBALE chimpanzee project does. The KIBALE chimpanzee project was founded by Dr. Richard Wrangham in 1987 and is one of the longest running chimpanzee field research sites in the world. We study the Kanyawara chimpanzee community, which right now numbers at just under 60 chimpanzees who live in KIBALE National Park in Western Uganda. Now, these are wild chimpanzees. We try our very best not to interfere with their lives in any way, aside from our quiet presence at a safe distance of 5 meters. This means we don't touch them or feed them or engage in any sort of play or interaction with them so that they lead their lives as if we weren't there at all. So each morning, our team of researchers and field assistants, who are these handsome gentlemen here, trek out before dawn into the forest to find where the chimpanzees had built their sleeping nests high up in the canopy the night before. And they wait for them to wake up and climb down to the ground and start their day. After which, we do our very best to follow the chimps all day long. Now, chimps don't swing through the trees like some of the other primates you may have seen or heard about. They tend to walk along the ground instead on all fours. And they move as a group that splits apart and reunites throughout the course of the day based on the needs and wants of the individuals. Now, our group travels anywhere from a couple hundred meters to 5 or 6 kilometers a day. And it is our job to record where they go, what they eat, who they socialize with, and sometimes stand under a tree where a chimpanzee is sitting and catch urine and feces so that we can bring it back to the lab and discover what's going on in the biochemistry inside their bodies. So I had an opportunity this past summer to visit our field site in the chimpanzees, and I can tell you that tracking them through the forest can be very grueling work. Here's my colleague Megan, who you can see has mud up to her thighs from falling in a swamp on her first day out tracking the chimpanzees. Here also is my colleague Stephanie, who is being hauled out of a swamp by our field assistant, James. I am told it took 2 field assistants to get her out of that particular bog that day. But because our field assistants and this project has persevered in conducting this kind of data collection for 35 years, we have amassed a colossal amount of data. This includes over 90,000 hours of direct chimpanzee observations, more than 45,000 samples of urine collected for lab analysis, which I'll come back to in a moment, and over 3.2 million GPS points. Not only does this kind of work allow us to record really fine details about the intricacies of chimp life, such as who they sit and travel with, what they pay attention to, who their closest allies are, but because we've been doing it for 35 years, we're increasingly able to capture the entire lifespan of a chimpanzee from birth to death at this level of detail. Now, while the chimps are located in Uganda, the team of researchers who study the chimps are based out of a number of different institutions across the US, including right here at UNM. Doctors Martin Muller and Melissa Emery Thompson lead this group at UNM. And the colossal amount of data collection and analysis have led to some pretty astounding outcomes, including a long history of highly cited publications in high impact journals. Associated with the KIBALE Chimpanzee Project, we have here on the second floor, the Comparative Human and Primate Physiology Center Research Lab, abbreviated to CHmPP or Chimp Lab, which was originally established to develop non-invasive methods for assessing the biochemistry in urine and feces to track chimpanzee health, energetics, and reproductive function, as well as to process environmental samples like plants. This is where those 45,000 urine samples are stored in 8 enormous freezers. And our students and researchers can regularly be found up in the lab running tests for levels of substances like cortisol and testosterone, which we can tie back to the date and time that the samples were collected and piece together what's going on inside the chimpanzees with what was going on around them at the time. And this helps us answer questions like, what's the role of testosterone in male aggression in the mating context? Or how does the quality of a chimpanzee mother's access to resources influence her metabolism and shape how often she can afford to give birth? But it's not just chimpanzee samples that are analyzed here. There's a lot of other researchers studying other animal species or even humans who are interested in designing these minimally invasive research using biological markers in substances like saliva, finger-shaped blood spots, hair, and even whale spouting. That's a new one. This lab has worked with anthropologists, biologists, psychologists, veterinarians, economists, and medical researchers, and it acts as yet another powerful driver of interdisciplinary science. And as you've all heard, there are tours being offered after this presentation, so feel free to go out and walk through the lab and check it out yourself. The other large component.
So it's kind of a.
Right, I think we have a volunteer from our Zoom audience. The other large component of the work that the KIBALE Chimpanzee Project does, outside of a strictly academic sense, is its involvement in conservation. As you heard earlier, chimpanzees are endangered and they live in habitats that are increasingly fragmented and unsafe. And one very large problem is snares. So a snare is a metal wire trap that is set in the forest with the intention for catching small ungulates like deer. But they're very difficult to spot, and chimpanzees sometimes get caught in them, which often results in severe injury, including loss of limb. Now, KCP works to combat this and promote conservation of chimpanzees in the area that we work. We have a snare recovery team whose job it is to go out into the forest and patrol and destroy snares that they come across. And we partner with educators at the KIBALE Project, which strives to support schools surrounding KIBALE National Park, including education on human-wildlife conflict and environmental protection. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't include just a few videos of chimpanzees here. They really are the star of the show. So in this first video, you'll see one of the things that chimpanzees are sometimes somewhat famous for, which is tool making. In this video taken by my colleague John, a young female chimpanzee named Gola uses a specifically fashioned stick to probe for insects in the bird inside a tree trunk. So here she is with her fashioned stick. She's identified that there's some carpenter bees in here. And here you can see her actually fashioning a different stick. She identifies a suitable candidate, breaks it off, adjusts the end, goes back to probing. And success. All right. So chimpanzees are also sometimes known for their aggression and their big display behavior. So here's a video also from John that captures some of this magnitude. So the first thing you'll hear is a big group of chimps all around in a state of high excitement because something's clearly going down in the group. And towards the end, you'll see one of our adult males come charging through the trees in this big display where he slaps the ground and shakes branches as he storms through trying to be impressive. I hope it's not too loud. Fair warning. motion. Very impressive. All right, and finally, to round things out, here's an example of behavior at the other end of the spectrum to show that, while they can be intense and show big aggression, they are not the killer apes that the media sometimes portrays. So this video was shot by my colleague Chris, who has spent a lot of time in the forest, specifically watching baby chimpanzees. What a great job. This right here is Eslam, and he was the alpha male, or the highest ranking, toughest guy in the group at the time this was filmed. And this little one here is just 2-year-old female Leaky. And without knowing anything about chimpanzee behavior, you will probably be able to identify that they are playing. So big tough old Eslam is just sitting there and letting this tiny little girl sort of use him as a jungle gym. Now chimpanzee play looks a lot like they tickle, they do these soft, gentle bites, they pinch, and here you can see her mouth open. That is called a play face, and it's somewhat akin to laughing. Yeah, very cute. So you can see he's very gently holding her arm in his mouth there. But this talk is not just about chimpanzees, as much as I love them, but rather about interdisciplinary science. So in returning to the story from earlier, so I'd arrived at UNM as an undergrad, and I'd somehow managed to convince Dr. Melissa Emery Thompson to take me on as a research assistant and allow me to do some basic data entry tasks with some of the ongoing KCP research. And I must have shown a glimmer of promise because at one of our meetings, she asked me if I had any skills in something called GIS, or Geographic Information Science. Here's where it starts to get interdisciplinary. Apparently KCP had this enormous collection of GPS, or spatial data, from the chimpanzees, which hadn't really been used to its full potential. I'd never even heard of GIS, but I decided it was something I should take an interest in. So I took an intro to GIS class with Dr. Zhigong in the geography department, and it changed my life. I'd go to class and learn how to use this fancy software built for spatial analysis. And then I'd come back to the KCP lab and practice it on the KCP data. And this is what my screen looked like at the time. These red lines are composed of lots of dots, which actually show the chimpanzees moving around their habitat. So eventually, I was taking so many courses in the geography department that I ended up switching majors. And after a few more years, I graduated from my Bachelor of Science degree in geography with honors, where my honors thesis combined the tools of geography and the collection of spatial data with questions about chimpanzee subjects to do a preliminary exploration of the Kanyawara home range and how it's changed over time using a couple of the most common methods. Here's one of the maps I built. That's my very first baby map, where these faint gray lines are actually the trail system in our chimpanzee community. And these colorful lines represent the outline of the chimpanzee home range using a couple of the different methods. Now, why bother measuring something like home range? Just really quickly, as I started diving deeper into the literature in this area, I learned that home range is really where you need to start when you want to know about how an animal uses space. It's a foundational piece of information that we can build on if we want to know how different kinds of individuals might use the various parts of their range differently, or who gets to live in the better neighborhoods within the home range and why. But it's really just the very surface of what is possible, and I knew there was so much more that could be done here. So for instance, these are two accomplished researchers who are way ahead of me, paving the road for science that sits at the intersection of geography and anthropology and conservation. So Dr. Meg Crowfoot has done some really incredible work using GPS collars to track each step of the individuals in a big group of baboons. And at this really fine level of detail, she's been able to tease apart how groups decide when and where to move, and who in the group makes those decisions, which teaches us things about the origins of social complexity. At the other end of the spectrum is Dr. Lillian Pintea, who uses satellite images of chimpanzee habitat to calculate changes in land use over time and keeps a really close eye on how the environment is changing. Now, one of the major factors that has pushed chimpanzees into their endangered status is loss of habitat. And so this kind of technology is also critical for conservation management. And it was this kind of research that really inspired me to take things further. And at this point, a few things happened. First, I applied to the master's program in the UNM Geography department and was very fortunate to be taken on by Dr. Chris Lippett, who you've met, and his Aspire lab group. So Aspire, which is short for the Center for Advancement of Spatial Informatics Research and Education, works to foster integrative GIS research and education by bringing together cutting-edge geographic tools and technologies with research faculty who have expertise across a broad range of interdisciplinary GIS science subfields. While the range of research that this group is involved with is expansive, some of their ongoing projects that I had the personal pleasure of participating in include Drones for Ducks, which is a collaboration with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service using remote sensing to develop a more efficient and a less invasive method to count and identify migratory waterfowl. So here you can see an image that was taken by a drone in a region that would have been pretty difficult to access for observers on the ground. And a computer generated count of all of the wildlife, all of the ducks and geese in that image. There's also the 30-year synoptic record of vegetation dynamics at the Sevieta National Wildlife Refuge, right here in New Mexico, just south of Albuquerque, where satellite imagery is combined with spectrophotometry to understand the impacts of climate variability in dryland environments. And finally, under the Tribal Colleges and Universities Program grant, Aspire has been developing a series of learning modules to make accessible the tools and the technologies of spatial analysis for students at the Southwest Indian Polytechnic Institute as they progress along their own research journeys. So in addition to a great collaborative workspace upstairs, which you are welcome to come explore just after this talk, the Aspire group also boasts a really impressive range of geospatial technologies, including, pictured here, the Visualization Lab, which is just down the hall, which has the 4th largest screen array in the US, I'm told. Aspire also has a number of really large computer servers to support the intensive kind of computation demands of working with big data. And it has an impressive fleet of drones built to capture aerial geographic imagery. So at the same time that I was getting acquainted with the Aspire Lab, a second thing happened, which was that this incredible new building on campus called the Physics, Astronomy, Interdisciplinary Sciences Building, or PAÍS, was nearly finished being built. And get this, both the KCP group / Chimp Lab and the Aspire Lab group were moving in on the 2nd floor. I'm not under any impressions that the situation was constructed for me specifically, but I will say I have been an incredibly lucky beneficiary of exactly the kind of interdisciplinary opportunities that this co-op was intended for. So I started my master's research, in which I took the KCP GPS data to another level. And I dug a lot deeper into my geography skills, and I investigated the impacts of method choice on the estimation of chimpanzee home range. Now, one thing I learned during the bachelor's is that the way you measure spatial data has an enormous impact on the answers that you get out of it. So my first goal was to identify and develop the right kind of analyses for our data sets and to make sure that my methods were the best available and the most scientifically valid. And that's what I did. I won't bore you with all the details, and you can read all 167 pages of that thesis on the UNM repository if you so desire. But I got the answers I was looking for. Here's my thesis. But during this time, I had the opportunity through my work in Aspire to develop my skills in a few important ways. I learned how to use the programming language R, specifically how to use R for spatial data. And the image in the center here is a graph generated from this work that shows the impact of method choice on the final product. I also took advantage of those large computer servers to work with all this data because it kept crashing my laptop. So I was very thankful to have access to these big machines. And I learned how to build a powerful geodatabase so that I could sift through the data as I needed it in an efficient way rather than having to look through it manually. And the top right is a sort of a schema of the database that I created from scratch. So by the time I finished with Aspire, I really felt ready, or as ready as you can ever be, to bring all these geographic skills back to the questions I had about where chimpanzees go and why, and I pursued the PhD. And here we are. I applied for and was accepted into the Evolutionary Anthropology program, PhD program here at UNM, working again with the KIBALE chimpanzee project, and with one foot squarely in geography and one in anthropology and the evolutionary questions about how we came to be human. So during these first 2 years of my PhD, I've been exploring the kinds of questions I'd like to ask in my research, including how do individuals use space within the home range? Are different regions used more or less intensely than others? And if so, why? How might the process of aging change the way that chimpanzees use space around them? And what could that potentially tell us about aging in humans? How do individuals of the same sex use space relative to their counterparts? And what can their patterns of overlap tell us about the relationships between the group members or the different habitat needs of individuals at different points in their life history? So using the skills I learned in my master's, I've been getting started on analyzing our data sets and trying to answer some of these questions. And here's what that looks like. So the top left here is a depiction of a home range for a particular chimp in a particular year. And all the little orange dots there are their GPS points. And you can see that not only now can we draw a boundary around the edge of their home range, but we can also produce these heat maps in blue, which tell us the darker areas are where they spend more time and the lighter areas are where they spend less time. In the top right is a figure produced by comparing the ranging activity across chimps of different ages. And here it looks like perhaps there is an effective age for males. As they grow older, they tend to use more space, but maybe there's not for females. Again, these are just preliminary analyses, so it's really exciting to dig into this finally. And at the bottom here, we can see some sex differences, both in the overall size of their range. Males tend to be a bit bigger than females, but also here you can look at some overlaps. Look how consistently the males use the same areas, whereas the females show some really different patterns, which leads us to maybe dig into the biochemistry, the behavior a little bit deeper and figure out why this is happening. But one of the most recent and I think coolest developments in my work that really exemplifies the kind of interdisciplinary work that we're talking about this evening is this. So the purpose of my visit to our field site this last summer was to introduce these, which are fancy new tablets for data collection. And until now, the chimps had been tracked using your typical handheld Garmin GPS unit. And the data was downloaded at the field station in Uganda and emailed to us every few months. And while this has been a productive way of collecting data and has generated the millions of GPS points currently in our database, it did come with a few problems. The first was that there was no way to update the software or the trail system in the units. So what was current when they were deployed in 2009 was really out of date in early 2022. And the field assistants that you saw earlier rely on these maps to safely and efficiently navigate the chimp habitat. And even though I had all these great mapping updates on my computer upstairs, there wasn't a way for me to get them to the people who needed them most. Second problem was that the time lag in getting those chunks of data off the GPS units, that couple of months, introduced a big potential for data loss and corruption. It was stuck on a unit that could be dropped in a swamp, stepped on by an elephant. That's a lot of data that's going missing, potentially. Luckily, we didn't have too many of those instances, but. So enter these state-of-the-art, military-grade touchscreen tablets, which are durable enough to be dropped in a swamp. I don't think they've done the elephant step test yet. But what makes them really helpful in solving the problems of the old system is the software that I programmed to go on them. So CHmPP, which is produced by a big GIS company called Esri, is designed for collecting spatial data on the go. And it allows me to configure everything so it's tailored for our specific needs for our chimpanzees. So I programmed it to allow our field assistants to collect a lot of really specific data, each piece of which is geotagged with an exact location on Earth. And it also gives them the ability to navigate maps through the field site. But here's where the magic comes in. So the CHmPP program on these tablets is connected to a cloud data service, also run by Esri, which connects to my desktop computer upstairs. So this means that at the end of every chimp tracking day, when field assistants return home, they simply hit send, and all of that data whizzes up into the cloud and then directly down to my computer, and I can see it within minutes. Since this was deployed back in June, I have received 75,000 GPS records directly to my desk. And it also works in the other direction. So if our team cuts a new trail or they see a chimp using a new tree, they can simply email me the details. I can update our master map file, and then I can send it right back to them all within an afternoon. So just as one more example of the benefits of this kind of technological step forward, here is a screenshot of the database that I see on my computer. And each of these lines, I've programmed that the field assistants have the choice to attach a photo. Now this here is a photo attached to this GPS point. So recently we had 2 instances where our chimpanzees were attacked by a mysterious wild hog. And this is really rare. We've never seen this before. And the field assistants were able to capture a photo of the hoof print that was left behind, or a hoof print that was left behind nearby. This yellow notebook is for scale. Here's the little hoof print there. And this kind of data helps us build a picture of what's going on in the forest by adding a photo details to specific locations. So we can identify what kind of species these might be, where they might be coming from. And this also extends to situations like snares, which I talked about earlier. I programmed a button for snares on there too, so that as the field assistants come across them, we get pictures, we get locations, and we get an idea of how this situation is changing through the forest in real time. So we're very much in this active phase of learning and development and taking the vast amounts of data we have, the ones we've already collected and the ones that are coming in every week, and expanding the kinds of research that we can do and questions that we can ask and answer with the tools and technologies that the discipline of geography is developing all the time. So I hope I've conveyed that the future holds really big potential for interdisciplinary science in the areas where different disciplines are coming together and creating this really productive fusion of questions and methods and different kinds of knowledge. And the Interdisciplinary Science Co-op here at UNM, based out of this incredible building, is playing an active role at the forefront in facilitating the kind of research and supporting the kind of work that I and others do and hope to do in the future, which I see as incredibly bright and full of possibility. And with that, I would like to say an enormous thank you to all of the folks who contributed to this journey and who make the interdisciplinary science field such a fruitful place to work. I'd also like to thank the UNM Alumni Association for hosting this evening's event and for bringing all of you here tonight. And last but not least, I always have to thank the KIBALE chimpanzees themselves, who are the inspiration for our life's work. And I guess I'd like to open it up.
We have time before we go on the tour for a couple of questions. So how about right here?
I've got someone who promotes interdisciplinary research for a long time. But the problem has always been that, nature doesn't have departments, but funding does.
Yeah.
And departments are very possessive. Are you running into weird problems funding things over so many different areas?
I think I'm a bit young in my career to have really encountered that barrier, but I can see that it could exist. I sometimes find it difficult to explain the kind of work that I do because people say, what's your degree in? And I say evolutionary anthropology, but then all of my work is very in mapping. So I think that is a barrier that's potentially something that maybe we as a co-op, as an interdisciplinary group, need to figure out ways to surmount those barriers. Yeah, I'm not smart enough to be the one to lead that, but I can see how it could definitely benefit the kind of work that that we're doing here.
Can you stand up when you ask your question, just so everyone?
Are you introducing the type of things that you are doing at UNM to the high school students in this area that can get so excited about joining?
Yeah, we do have some opportunities to engage with the high school students through a couple different avenues, mentorship programs, etc. I guess sometimes you feel like, well, is anyone really going to be interested in what I'm doing? But I'm sure they would. Yeah, I think that would be another opportunity for the co-op and us as an interdisciplinary group to really reach out. So I think high schoolers are sort of taught that, you have to pick one field, but there's all of these different mixes of their interests that could be really useful. Yeah, I think that's a good avenue forward.
You had a question.
I'm a little bit of a newer graduate. I just finished my undergraduate degree last year. You said you studied like the spatial informatics. So I dipped my toe, and you talked about how like it could possibly have like human applications.
Oh, yeah.
So for me in my undergraduate research, it was kind of an issue I stumbled across. Was my primary focus was human trafficking.
Oh.
And so my kind of like big question is, do you think like how you kind of collect the data points when it comes to chimpanzees, do you think that would actually be like a realistic thing to do for like tracking like human traffickers and being able to kind of, I guess, provide more applications to actually people on the ground? Because through the little bit of research that I did, I realized that one of the biggest issues that they have is actually finding the spaces within they actually operate, as well as how they kind of like maneuver through those spaces as well.
Yeah, I think in my geography education, one thing I learned is that you can map just about anything. And these tools that geography is developing are very multimodal. I've seen this particular program, Quick Capture, used for forest firefighting to help coordinate units on the ground, where they can in real time update, okay, I'm over here, this is what's happening, I'm going to put these on the map, and then those guys over there can see what's going on. So I can absolutely see mapping, and maybe a program like this in particular, being useful for so many different disciplines. Geography in particular is a really well poised for interdisciplinary work, because you can, as I said, you can map anything.
Great. We have time for maybe one more question. I'll ask the final question then. Out of all of your research and your master's and PhD work, has there just been something that just completely surprised you that you've learned about the chimps?
Oh my goodness.
That was completely unexpected?
Can I give you a funny one?
Sure.
So I went out into the field this summer expecting just this Natural Geographic, this David Attenborough narrated, beautiful, just picturesque environment. And the chimps woke up, and no one had thought to tell me how flatulent they are. It's just a chorus during the day. So I think just the experience of being face to face with them and just seeing them in all their glory, I think was phenomenal. No, there's things that surprise me every day, honestly. Sometimes I'll open a map expecting to see one thing, and it's not. And then I have to sort of stand back and sort of reorganize how I think about them. So there's surprises every day.
That's great, great. Well, thank you so much, Jillian. You're. Before we go on the tour, just want to again thank Jillian and Associate Dean Chris Lippett and the staff here at PAÍS and the alumni relations staff that helped put this event on. We appreciate all of your time and efforts. We've got a few gifts to provide to you, Associate Dean Lippett. Something for you and Jillian.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Now we're going to be offering tours of the facility and just encourage you to keep engaging in Lobo living rooms. They're just incredible learning experiences with what's going on here at the university. And you can find out when those are, dates and times at the unmalumni.com website. Okay, thank you so much.